Most of us have probably heard the term, maybe if you're a certain age, you can't judge a book by its cover. But since books are probably becoming a little obsolete, and the saying is probably becoming obsolete, as I get older in recent years, I realize maybe I'm becoming obsolete because I'll say things, and some people, particularly younger generations, might say, "What did you just say?" For instance, when you ask how you're doing, and I say fair to middling, you'll have to research that one yourself. So I thought, by example, before I share my thought today, would be you can't judge a book by its cover. What does that mean? Have we thought about that? Well, it seems fairly obvious, but by example, I have this particular book here. It's actually a journal, and so by its cover, I've got tape that's pretty gnarly and old on the binder. I've got a sticky note that I probably taped there 20 years ago. From the outside, this book is plain, it's black, it's tore up, it's taped, it's nasty. You would never think anything about it as you passed it by without knowing that actually the truth is on the inside of this little black journal was given to me by my sister at Christmas of 2006. So for nearly 20 years, I've carried this little book that looks pretty beat up and tattered and insignificant from the outside. And it's only actually maybe a little over half filled because I'm not a big journaler. But actually, this little insignificant, tore up, nasty little book from the outside contains, outside of a few sprinklings of writings in like recent years, in particular, even though I've had it for nearly 20 years, it covers a good decade of really significant period of my life of growth where I had journaled and took note of. And so actually what you wouldn't know is I consider this one of my most prized possessions, not because of what it looks like from the outside, but because of some of the insight, the growth periods, things God showed me, sermon ideas, life ideas, reflecting. This contains a lot of things that I've still yet to ever develop. So I would be fairly sad, disappointed to lose or for this to be destroyed. So you can't judge a book by its cover. And another way we may think about this in our current terms is that appearances could be deceiving. It's really probably how I would most think about titling today's thought, is that so often we're looking from the outside at each other. And I think from either end of the spectrum that appearances can be deceiving. I think the more obvious ones is that we may look at a person from the outside and assume the person is better. Just know that my whole point of this message is to not categorize each other so much would be the end zone. So anything I say is, just for lack of better words, inefficiency. To say we could assume a person is better because they appear strong, good looking, prosperous, something, whatever. From the outside, we may appear they're actually better than they are. This is probably in the pocket of personality, really fits our current culture and in the era of our lifetimes where TV and marketing and touching and imaging, and now in the massive era of selfies that I can edit and re-edit. You know, the truth is I'm in a room of my home that's somewhat a recording studio, multi-purpose, but it's a real setting, but it's manufactured to a degree, right? I've got lights back there. I've got a camera. I'll chop off the beginning of the video where I'm sitting down. I'll chop off the end where I'm getting up because I'm doing this on my own. I don't have a team. I'm not prospering like that from things just yet. And so the point is that appearances can be deceiving, and we can make things look better than they are, when in truth, in the era of personality, where I'm putting on a persona, we all have a persona, a personality, a mask that we wear to culture. And so on that end of the spectrum, that we might assume that a person is actually better than they are, that their qualities are better than they are based on outward appearance. And that word personality, just for a tidbit of those who geek out on odd information, is an old Greek term, a theater term. Persona is literally a theater mask. And we all wear them, we all do them. And so the age of personality, where personality is king and charisma is king, and that outward appearance, and we know through history, we can be deceived by that it can not be what it appears to be. I think the other somewhat more obvious tone of this problem we may have as human beings by looking at the outward appearance is the other end of the spectrum, where we may assume a person, dismiss a person, assume that they don't have anything to offer based on a weaker, right? A a less attractive, a less strong physique on the outside. You may think of, let's throw at the one end, the obvious one in history is like Hitler, right? This profound, powerful speaker that somehow rallied masses around him, and political mastermind and strategist. That would be one example of appearances from the outside were deceiving to what was on the inside. The end of the spectrum where we think about, we may dismiss those that may appear weak from the outside and miss the gold inside, kind of like my beat up little book, that actually to me, this is a treasured thing, because inside of it, it holds a lot. It holds years of my life and reflection and growth and these type things. One example we think of, I think it's Richard Dawkins. I mix up two people in science field, but one of them was very limited, very disabled. I think it was MS or something that really debilitated his outside, but his mind was brilliant, and he influenced history in the realm of science to quite a degree. That would be an example I might think of a person who we might dismiss from the outside. And so you're probably thinking into this with me already. Maybe it relates to you. Maybe you're a person who is strong from the outside, but you're really struggling inside with some things, or in your personal world. Or maybe you're a person who people dismiss and they look past. Maybe you're shy. Maybe physically, you're not someone that stands out. Maybe monetarily, you're a person of limited means, and people are walking by you every day, not realizing that you're greatly gifted on the inside. And maybe you don't even realize that yet, that there's an artistic ability. There's an ability for words. I was kind of that example. Younger, I barely ever talked. My childhood was, the way it kind of went was not great. It kind of damaged me to a degree. I had many blessings, but I had many trauma. And so it created a way where I didn't talk a lot. I was insecure. You never would have guessed up until the age of 25, when Christ found me in a jail cell, that I would be called to preach and speak and talk to people. And I still get anxious. I still get nervous about it after these years. But that would be an example where you never would have guessed that gifting, that treasure that God had placed inside of this earthen vessel was covered from the outside. And it still happens to me today. And so I'm kind of going somewhere with this, that on one end of the spectrum, we can assume people are better than they are based on outward strengths. And on the other end of the spectrum, we can assume people don't have anything to offer based on a weak outward appearance. I think what's more subtle, and this is really what got my mind thinking on this week, was in the middle of there somewhere. I think maybe we can all relate, is that for me, I got thinking into this, that there's another layer where we may place too much expectation on others. We may assume that someone is capable of more than they are because from the outside they appear to be okay, right? We assume, oh, you have no problems in life. You must be having it all together because you're attractive or intelligent or educated, or you have privileges in life, or any number of things. We can assume that people don't have a struggle. And I think that in that realm, I can relate. I think about mental health with that, like depression, the hidden things. Maybe it's a physical illness, right? Maybe it's diabetes or something, or chronic pain, something that we're dealing with, where society and people, they sort of we can use this in a way of looking at from the outside and assuming and judging and comparing. And we put upon people things that actually is creating an isolation for us, that people don't realize that we're struggling. And then maybe we try to explain it, and over time, people still they can't really see that struggle, that thing, that thorn in the flesh, that battle that we face. And sometimes that can be very discouraging, and we become isolated, and we just stop sharing with people our struggle. Or maybe we isolate from people altogether because people are always demanding of us, because they assume maybe we don't struggle as much as we do. And I can certainly relate to that in many ways in my lifetime. Sometimes I think of things like an addiction that we're battling, a mental health struggle, a trauma, a wound, right? That maybe is festering and coming all the way back to childhood in our lives, that people just can't see it from the outside, and they don't understand, and they don't give us the grace and the mercy. Basically, this thought today boils down to a problem in our human nature, our culture, where I got a friend of mine, it comes to mind in this topic, that we basically are looking at each other saying, why can't you just be like me? See, there's a fault in our human nature that we're from the inside looking out, and we're judging the world through our own filter, our own strengths, our own understanding, our own knowledge. And by the way, in that, we're very poor at seeing ourselves, that other people can see our faults. Other people are doing the same to us. It's easier to look and judge from the outside, and we're filtering it. So it takes effort, it takes work, it takes the Spirit of God to get past that. I want to throw some tips out, but the scripture that I most think about in this realm is a classic one when King David was being anointed as a young man. And I'm just going to read you one verse for sake of, I'm going to try to keep this shorter because I found that after about 20 minutes, Facebook will just not load these videos. So I'll do my best. So in this scene, Samuel, the prophet Samuel, is sent to anoint the king. He doesn't know who it's going to be yet. He's going through David's brothers. And in this 1 Samuel 16, verse 7, is where the Lord finally gets to David. And even Samuel's kind of like, oh, this can't be the one. The brothers are like, ah, there's one brother left. It's the runt. He's out in the field with the sheep because that's kind of where he belongs. Surely all these tall, good-looking, built, more experienced brothers must be one of them, but they're not. And so the Lord boils down to this classic statement. This verse says, "But the Lord said to Samuel, look not on his countenance, his outside appearance, or on the height of his stature, because I've refused him." So he's saying of the last brother, don't assume because he looks to be the best looking, the most talented, the most athletic. Don't assume by those outward measurements that he's the one, because the Lord's like, I've actually refused him. He's not him either. Who it's going to be is David, right? That's the surpriser. He's the underdog. He's the outlier, right? He's the comeback kid. The Lord continues the statement to say, for the Lord seeth not as a man seeth, for man looks on the outward appearance, but the Lord looks on the heart. And I love that verse, and it comes back to me time and again over the years to remind me, hopefully encourage you, that, we're walking through this life. Essentially, we're alone. We're blessed if we've had people. Maybe we have a friend or two. Maybe we have a social media following. Maybe we have family. Maybe we have church. But we all know that at the end of the day, while we're alone, it's us and the Lord. And so to strengthen us to say, it's good news to know, encouragement to know, that while others may not, the Lord who designed you, he's looking at your heart. He's looking at the inside. Now, it's also challenging because we can use that to say, Lord, you know my heart, so please search it. You know there's some things in here that are not right now. Help me fix that. Man, I have to do that every day. There's been some really dark times when it's been real ugly in there. There's been better times when I've been a little better in my heart. But it's an ongoing journey to say, Lord, you already know my heart. I'm not going to hide from you. I know you're my good Father. And I know you're judging me. You're the only one that's able to judge me properly, because you're not looking at appearances or past or experience or this and that or letters behind my name or any other thing. You're looking into me. You know my soul would be a better way to say this, because the heart is part of the soul realm. The mind, the will, the emotions, the heart. That's our soul. God is watching our soul realm. He knows what he put in us. He knows what we're able to do. He knows our fears. He knows our worries. And so I just want to throw out maybe a few suggestions, because the solution is not easy. Judging a book by its cover is natural. If I look at this book, I say, well, no, I'm not interested in that book, and I'm glad, because you can't have it. So how do we work on this in ourselves? I think it's difficult, but some suggestions I would throw out to wrap up would be, I feel like the Lord gave me, is one might be, how do we not continue to just assume and judge or dismiss and overlook? Is Lord, help us to, one, seek to understand a person, not assume, not just judge from the outside and say, well, I've got that person figured out. I'll tell you honestly, a confession of mine is, especially over the years, is it really frustrates me that people assume they know me that don't know me. And I'll be honest, and maybe gives you a pass of sigh of relief, usually it's family. Usually it's people that have known us the longest, that as we grow, as we change, people just say, oh yeah, I know Jason, I know Joe, I know Jill, I know them, when they actually don't. We've grown so beyond that. We've all are living lives together, and we don't give each other credit for our growth, our experience, our change, what God's doing in us. And so let's, maybe Lord help us, let's seek to understand, slow down to say, let that person teach us who they are. Let us drop the idea that we already know them and reset our minds and say, let me see them anew. And we all can fall into this. So nothing I'm saying, I'm assuming, is easy. I think it's difficult. I think We need God to help us. The second thing I'd say is drop comparisons. Paul talks about the comparison game as a killer. He says, comparing ourselves among ourselves is foolishness. It's like, yes, we're all human beings and there's a lot of similarities, but on the other side of the coin, there is no one like us. To compare ourselves to each other is absolute folly. It's not just apples and oranges, it's comparing an apple to a car, right? It's comparing an apple to a screwdriver. We're each so uniquely wired. We have a similarity of being human. We have a shared experience of being human, but God designed each one of us so very different. And I've endeavored my whole adult life with my education, with my experience, to understand human nature. Like, that is the realm, if I have an expertise, is spiritually, physically, mentally, emotionally. Like, what are we? What's my problem? Who am I? I think that that's the secret of life. Figure out who you are, who God designed you to be, and then create a niche around that. We do it all reverse in our culture. That's a whole other topic. That word comparison. Let's drop the comparison and say, instead of me comparing and say, why can't you be strong where I'm strong? And, well, I wish I was strong like you are where I'm weak. All that kind of stuff. Just drop some of that. Seeking to understand, dropping the comparison. A third thing I would say is, man, grace. I think in our culture, and I'm just going to say, I think in the church, sometimes the worst place, that what God is teaching me is that the solution to most answers is mercy and grace. When I'm frustrated, when I don't understand, when I'm comparing, when I'm feeling less than or better than, what I need to do is extend grace. Like, look, you are who you are. I am who I am. I have deficits. I have lots of faults, lots of limitations, but I have some strengths. You have some strengths. You have some limitations. If we would learn to extend grace to the areas and just say, there is nothing scripturally, anyway, there's so many topics in this and I'm going long again. We're not going to become perfect beings in this life. Let me just bust the bubble and give you the news alert. We're not, that's a misstatement and misnomer to be perfect as God. What that is a character of learn to love in perfect love as God loves. Like, our lifetime is God teaching us to love and trust Him and be perfected in spirit and nature as He is. On the outside of this, we live in a fallen world. We're still in a natural shell of a being. We're not going to become perfect. So what replaces that perfection is grace. Grace replaces the fact that we're all imperfect and we're going to hurt each other, let each other down. We're going to fail at times, extending grace. So seeking to understand instead of assuming, dropping the comparisons. God, help us to give more grace to each other in our limitations. And the fourth thing I'd say is beginning, instead of all that, to seek to always, regardless. Sometimes people that are strong, I know this is true too, that could be missed, is a person that is strong. People assume they never are hurting. And so sometimes they're suffering. Maybe they're beautiful. Maybe they're wildly intelligent. Maybe they're gifted. People never see their pain because they assume they don't have it. And that's not true either. So whether we're strong, whether we're weak, when we drop the comparison and the assuming and all those things, and we just begin to say, let me just take a stance where I'm going to seek to uplift and empower everyone. Wouldn't that be a different world? And that's what the Bible does teach us. Maybe I could submit myself, humble myself, which, man, let me tell you, I fail at this stuff every day. Everything I teach, God gives me to me first, and I don't assume that I do it even nearly perfectly. Some days I don't do it at all. A lot of the things that I know to be true, but I struggle. So this is for me too, to say, begin to see through the eyes of, instead of the judgment comparison, well, you're strong, you're weak, you got this. It's just, how can I uplift you? How can I empower you? How can I strengthen the person? I can humble myself, submit myself to uplift others. And in that, I get lifted up with it, and God will lift me up in time in the ways I need to be. And I think that would be such a change in our bipartisan world, our conflicted culture. I'm here in America recording this, obviously, could be listening in any part of the world, but it would solve a lot of answers. Instead of saying, let's fight and compare and compete and divide, which is where our culture worldwide, but here in America, really bad right now. It could drop some of that. If you say, how do we all uplift each other and empower each other, and we all get lifted with it? I think that's more the Christ example He's given us. Hope these things have been encouragement. Pray for me that I could do these things better. There's some good examples, but not easy to apply. Seeking to understand, drop the comparisons, given more grace, and seek to uplift and empower can help us to not fall into the trap of just assuming or dismissing the people around us. God bless you. Have a great week.